a video once I've actually studied it more fully, in fact. Suffice to say, however, that I am against barbaric practices and punishments like chopping off the hands of thieves. I think that's just a terrible thing, isn't it? The hands of a thief are worth far more than the things that they've probably stolen. In fact, the value of a human life and his body are worth far more than any other random object. We tend not to value each other enough in life. And there's far better ways of dealing with something like stealing, like making person pay back the thing they've stolen or the value of it. Making them work and taxing them to pay for the value of what they've stolen, perhaps. So there's far more better methods than that. But I'm also aware that there's other kind of schools of Sharia law that perhaps don't employ such barbaric methods. So I think perhaps we shouldn't lump them all in together. And I think we should be cautionary about mouthing off about things that we're not qualified to. I don't really know if those barbaric things really do represent mainstream Islam or whether they are just a sort of version of it. Whether they're just a local manifestation within a certain area. That might well be. And there may well be aspects of Sharia law that I do indeed agree about, and there probably are other things that I don't, I imagine. But I suppose not having a clear enough picture of those beliefs as a legal system means that I'm not properly qualified, I have to admit, to actually critique it. So that's for another video, that, in fact. But actually, I think actually the issues I covered were really everything I wanted to address anyway in this. But the last point I want to make, Islam as a faith versus Islam as a theocracy, because I think we tend to get confused by the two. The political movement of Islam, those that want it to be a political theocracy, Islamic governance, in other words, and those that want to sort of live their own Islamic faith, but don't necessarily want it to be to govern other people, but they want to live their own life and their own choices of what they eat, of how they interact with others. They want that to be by their own Islamic rules, in terms of how and when and they pray and those sort of things, and their customs. So I think there's a sharp difference between those that want to live their own Islamic beliefs and those that want to impose them to others through a theocracy. And I think the latter probably is where my concerns are more, actually, if I'm honest. And I think that may be true, actually, of imposing any kind of religious beliefs through theocracy, but equally imposing atheist beliefs as well through governance. I think that too often we think religious beliefs imposed on others are just Muslim or just Christian or Jewish, but they are often pagan or atheist as well. I don't like the idea of imposing any kind of beliefs on other people, really, except to say, we do need to have moral laws and uphold moral laws in life. I suppose, I do want to impose rules to uphold, to prevent murder. So I do believe in imposing some rules because I do have beliefs of my own, So I do think that we've got to have some sort of rules and beliefs, and if they have theological beliefs behind it, then so be it. That's my belief. Because I think murder is wrong, because I think rape is wrong, and I think most people would agree with that. I think we should have laws governing that to enforce and to prevent those things, and to try and uphold various other laws as well, like that. Whether that's a theological belief or not, that's a debate, isn't it, really? But I think I think that doesn't answer any question. That provokes more questions, really, to me, actually. And I think there's a whole issue, actually. There's a whole debate in that, isn't there, about the relationship between religion and politics. I personally think that it's sort of like somewhere in the middle, that there's a danger of being too involved with this world and worldly ways and wanting power and authority, um, driven purely and only by worldly ways, and only wanting power. But I also think there's a problem as well of being divorced from that and having no involvement with that at all. So I think it's somewhere in the middle of those two extremes probably is the right solution in terms of how we sort of go about operating. And I think that's probably the most sensible middle path in it, really, of trying to interact with the world, but not being conformed by the world at the same time. But I think I'm kind of up for trying to educate and learn myself more about what Muslim beliefs are, because as I learn, I kind of felt how woefully short and inadequate my own understandings are, especially concerning, 1 in 6 people. So I think it's really important to sort of study it more thoroughly. And then that involves interacting and learning from more people through dialogue. And also, I learn through watching well-sourced documentaries that will show a variety of different people's views, different cultures and different countries. And so that's something I'm really intending to sort of focus on doing more, so that I am more qualified in future for understanding and critiquing different laws. But yeah, I would encourage other people to explore and to educate and to learn about other people's faiths. It doesn't mean that you're going to convert or become or revert to their faith or anything, but it does mean that you've made an effort to try and relate to and to understand other people's beliefs. And you might find you have common ground. You might find you've got some areas that you agree on and some areas that you don't. And I think that's a good point to enter into a conversation with someone, isn't it, really? And it means that you're much better qualified to do that if you have made the effort to actually understand some things about their faith. And so no one's going to accept your view on their faith if you just sort of like, if you don't know anything about it and haven't made an effort. And if you demonize people and say it's all bad, or if you deify it and just say, oh, it's all good, without sort of giving a proper critique, I think it's hard, but you have to engage with it as a complex thing with lots of facets within it. And that involves some things that you may well agree with, in fact, and some things you may well disagree with. And that's a complex relationship, but life is complex, isn't it? So it's but it does make life fascinating and interesting at the same time. So yeah, anyway, I've waffled too much now, and those are my general thoughts and reflections on Islam. And I do want to sort of study Sharia law more, and I think that is something that is of interest, because it's something that does affect a lot of people, especially in the Arabic and the North African world, and also small Muslim communities in the Western world more generally now as well.